When family turns their back on you. I stood on the doorstep of my parents' house, the icy wind biting through my threadbare jacket. My pockets were empty, my debts a crushing weight, and my heart heavy with desperation. I had nowhere else to go. My family, the people I thought would always be my safety net, were my last hope. But when my mother opened the door, her expression was cold. "We can't help you," she said, her voice void of any warmth. She wouldn't even look me in the eye. Behind her, my father sat in his recliner, staring blankly at the TV as if I didn't exist. My sister, who I'd once bailed out of countless messes, leaned against the doorframe with a smirk. "Good luck," she said, her words dripping with sarcasm. And just like that, the door closed in my face. No offers of help, no sympathy, not even a cup of tea. They turned their backs on me when I needed them most. I stood there for a long moment, the rejection burning hotter than the cold. It wasn't just about the money, it was the realization that I was truly alone. That night, sitting on a park bench with nothing but a crumpled $20 bill in my pocket, I had a choice. I could wallow in self-pity and let my circumstances consume me, or I could fight. And somewhere in that dark moment, something inside me ignited. I started at the bottom, the very bottom, a grueling job on a construction site, long hours, backbreaking work, and barely enough pay to scrape by. But I worked. During my lunch breaks, I devoured books and videos about finance, entrepreneurship, and marketing. At night, I scoured forums and free courses, teaching myself skills I couldn't afford to pay someone else to teach me. Sleep became a luxury. I lived on instant noodles and the dream of a better future. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't quick. Every dollar I saved felt like a victory. Then came my first breakthrough. A small freelance gig turned into a steady side hustle. That side hustle turned into a fledgling business. I poured every ounce of energy and focus into it. There were setbacks, failed ventures, betrayals, and sleepless nights wondering if I'd made a mistake. But I kept going. Years passed and my hard work paid off. My business grew. I opened my first office, then a second. I hired a team, expanded into new markets, and watched my bank account transform from a source of stress into a symbol of my perseverance. I had made it. And then, one day, the unthinkable happened. I was sitting in my office reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant buzzed in. "There's a couple here to see you. They said it's personal." I frowned, but told her to send them in. The door opened, and there they were, my parents. They looked different. My father's once proud posture was slouched, and my mother's confident demeanor had crumbled. Behind them, my sister stood nervously, avoiding my gaze. "Son," my mother began, her voice shaky, "we need your help." I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers. "Oh," I said, my tone deliberately neutral. My father cleared his throat. "We're in trouble. Financial trouble. If we don't get help soon, we're going to lose the house." "And?" I asked, feigning ignorance. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We were hoping you could loan us some money, just enough to get back on our feet." For a moment, I was back on that icy doorstep, hearing their cold voices dismissing me. The anger and hurt I thought I'd buried threatened to resurface. But instead of lashing out, I smiled. "Do you remember what you told me the last time I came to you for help?" I asked softly. They didn't answer, but their guilty expression said it all. "You said, 'Good luck,' and I found my own luck. I pulled myself out of the hole I was in. And now you're asking me to do what you wouldn't?" My sister finally spoke up, her voice defensive. "We didn't have a choice back then. Things were different." I raised an eyebrow. "Different? You had a roof over your heads and food on the table. You just didn't want to help." They sat in silence, unable to refute my words. I took a deep breath. "I'm willing to help, but not in the way you expect." Their faces lit up with hope, but I quickly extinguished it. "I won't hand over cash. If you want my help, you'll have to earn it. I have positions available in my company. Dad, you can work in one of my warehouses. Mom, I could use someone to handle office cleaning. And you," I said, pointing at my sister, can join the customer service team. Their hope turned to disbelief. Work? My mother spat. You want us to work for you? Yes, I said simply. That's the offer. Take it or leave it. They left, muttering about pride and dignity, refusing my terms. As they walked out, I felt a strange mix of emotions: vindication, sadness, and a deep sense of closure. I didn't wish them ill, but I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me. Life had taught me to rely on myself, and now I was finally free of the weight of their rejection. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success, and I had plenty of that to spare. Their departure should have felt like victory, but it didn't. I sat there in my office, staring at the door long after they'd left. Memories I thought I'd buried came flooding back. Cold nights, wondering if I'd eat the next day, the shame of asking for help and being denied, and the countless moments when I swore I'd never let anyone make me feel that powerless again. I had everything I once dreamed of: a thriving business, a beautiful penthouse apartment, even a sleek car that felt more like a trophy than transportation. But that day stirred something deeper. For weeks after their visit, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the story wasn't over. My family might have left, but the weight of unresolved emotions remained. Why had they really refused to help me back then? Were they genuinely struggling, or was it something else? I decided to find out. One night, after a late meeting, I drove back to the neighborhood where I grew up. The streets were the same, but everything else felt smaller, worn down. The house where I'd once lived with my parents loomed at the end of the block. Its paint was peeling, and the lawn was overgrown. I parked across the street and watched as the lights flickered in the living room. A shadow passed by the window, my mother. For a moment, I considered leaving. But then I thought about that boy who stood on this same street, rejected and alone. I wasn't him anymore. I knocked on the door. When my father opened it, his face was a mix of shock and unease. "What are you doing here?" he asked gruffly. "I have questions," I said, "and I think you owe me answers." We sat in the cramped living room, a space that hadn't changed in years. The same faded wallpaper, the same sagging couch. My mother sat stiffly in her chair, while my father stared at the floor. My sister wasn't home, which made the tension a little easier to bear. "Why didn't you help me?" I asked directly. "Back then, when I was drowning, why did you turn me away?" They exchanged a glance, and for the first time, I saw something other than coldness in their eyes. It was guilt. "We were scared," my mother said softly. "Scared?" I repeated, incredulous. "Of losing everything," my father interjected. "Your mother and we were barely holding it together. The mortgage, her medical bills. We didn't want to tell you, but we were already behind on payments. We thought if we helped you, we'd lose the house." It was a revelation I hadn't expected. I'd always assumed they didn't care. But now I saw the cracks in their armor, the fear, the pride that kept them from admitting their struggles. "Why didn't you just say that?" I asked, my voice softer now. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" My mother wiped her eyes. "Because we were ashamed? Parents are supposed to protect their kids, not let them see how weak we are." I sat back, absorbing their words. The anger I'd carried for years started to unravel, replaced by something more complex. The conversation shifted. We talked about the past, about the choices we made, and the paths we took. For the first time, they asked about my journey, what I went through, how I built my business. "I'm proud of you," my father said, his voice thick with emotion. Even if I didn't show it, I always was. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. When I left that night, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt lighter. A few months later, I got a call from my sister. She was drowning in credit card debt and needed help. This time, I didn't hesitate. I met her for coffee and laid out a plan. Not just a bailout, but a real plan to get her back on track. Budgeting, financial counseling, and even a job in my company. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice filled with suspicion. "Because I know what it's like to feel like you're out of options," I said, "and because I believe in second chances." She took the job. It wasn't easy. She struggled at first, but over time she found her footing. And for the first time in years, we started to rebuild our relationship. Helping my family didn't mean forgetting the past. It didn't erase the pain of their rejection or the years I spent proving I didn't need them. But it allowed me to write a new chapter, one where I wasn't defined by bitterness or pride. Sometimes life gives you the chance to be better than the people who hurt you, not to punish them, but to show them what compassion looks like. And in doing so, you find healing for yourself. When I look back now, I don't see a story of revenge or success. I see a story of resilience, redemption, and the power of letting go.